September 1st.
How are you today? Welcome to a chat with Glendora on what happened on the week from September the 8th to September the 15th today. Do you like my new wig? I saw Officer Fisher down on Mamaroneck Avenue in White Plains, and I told him I was going into the wig store to buy a new wig. The lighting on the show must be good today because I can't see a thing. And I want to tell you what has happened on Scott Lord, Glendora versus Scott Lord. The names that you see there on the screen, that would be Duberstein, Judge Duberstein, Judge Hall, Andrew Maloney, former United States Attorney, Eastern District, Harold Jones, United States Trustee, Neil Mann, former Assistant United States Trustee, Teresa Kavanaugh, President United States Trustee in Garden City, and Joseph Derby. The other defendants are in the state courts. So what has happened there? Big news. Judge Cattell is out. Judge Cattell left the United States District Court, Southern District in White Plains, and he's gone to Connecticut. The word is that 2 years ago he had a very difficult trial. People gave him a hard time, and he wanted out ever since. So he really, and then he had a heavy caseload because Judge Bryant was down in the Foley Square 3 days a week, and Judge Broderick wasn't taking the load, and it seemed that Judge Cattell's name was always coming out of the wheel. So he has gone to Connecticut, and it is his bad decision that we are appealing in the United States Court of Appeals. On the oral argument is on September 27th, so that's a Tuesday, and it's at 10, anywhere from 10 to 1. Why don't you come down and hear it? Anyway, I will be sure to tell you all about it. Related to Scott Lord case is that A Chat with Glendora is back on cable television in Nassau County per order of the Supreme Court of the state of New York, Westchester County. It is back there. It was on Thursday night last week for the first time. Tonight it will be on at 11:30 on Channel 25, and it will be on the third Thursday in September at 11:30, and the fourth Thursday will be on 11, but starting October 7th, all of October, and from then on forever, it will be on its old time period. 10 p.m. Friday nights, Channel 25. And I just signed their contract. They wanted me to sign the contract again, so I did. It's a public access user's contract. So don't be afraid of them, sign them. Gee, I think that's everything on what happened in the Scott Lord matter. The matter before us is Scott Lord. Okay. Now we'll have to have some jokes. Employee Ed, you've been just like a son to me, Ed. Surly, insolent, and unappreciative. A teacher was asked, what are the 3 things you like most about being a teacher? And the teacher said, well, motivating young people, shaping the next generation, and opening up youthful minds. And the reporter said to the second teacher, and what are the 3 things you like best about being a teacher? And the teacher said, June, July, and August. Little Johnny said that he was close to the right answers on the test. He got close to the right answers on the test. They were on the only one desk away. I voted. I certainly wouldn't miss voting. And here's a congregant of ours, that's Sue Johnson from the church in the Highlands. And she is working in the polls in Ridgeway School. I vote at the Jewish Community Center at 21 Greenridge. I certainly would not vote for Asher Katz after those bad, bad letters that he wrote in behalf of Russell Brower, who lied and stole and cheated us. PBS second quarter report has come. This is their primetime premiere week, September 19th, coming up Monday. And let's see, Sunday is going to be 60 Minutes at 7 p.m. and Murder, She Wrote and CBS Sunday Movie. Monday's going to be The Nanny, Dave's World, Murphy Brown, Love and War and Northern Exposure. Tuesday, Rescue 9/11, CBS Tuesday Movie. Wednesday, The Boys Are Back, Daddy's Girls, Touched by an Angel, 48 Hours. Thursday, Due South, Eye to Eye with Connie Chung. Eye to Eye with Connie Chung, I got to tell you that they aren't doing anything on the story where Glendora beats Cablevision. But Broadcast New York is, and that's a great big long schedule, and I've got to read it to you. All your friends and relatives can see it in Buffalo, Rochester, Syracuse, Plattsburgh, Utica, Kingston, Albany, on New York 1 in Manhattan, on Channel 20 in Waterbury, Connecticut. They call it Hartford. Friday night, Diagnosis Murder. Yeah, that's gross. Under Suspicion and Picket Fences, and Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman on Saturday. The 5 Mrs. Buchanans, A Hearts Alive, A Fire, and Walker, Texas Rangers. I don't know, it all sounds like violence and sex to me. Doing the oral argument on September 27th. This is the appellant's brief. This is the funny-looking defendant's appellee's brief, and this is the appellant's reply brief. And so I will go down there and I will argue those points where Judge Cattell was all wrong. On Glendora versus the Gannett bad management, nothing happened this past week. We are waiting for the oral argument date before the United States Court of Appeals in Foley Square on Judge Broderick's very bad decision that Gannett is not a monopoly in Westchester. Get anybody else to believe that. We will go down and we will answer. This is the appellant's brief on that. And I don't know where Kalaji's appellee's brief is. It's pretty bad. It's very thin and it's only about 8 pages. And then this is the appellant's, Glendora's reply brief. Gannett continues to be scooped, but then what else can you expect from Gannett? They continue, when you call them up to notify them about their being on television and the report being on television, the same stupid cranked out answer comes, you'll have to talk to our lawyer. This is a communications company and they don't know how to communicate. So I would say nothing happened on Glendora versus the Gannett bad management. But on his astronomy test, the moon is more important than the sun. Because the sun shines during the day when we don't need it, and the moon gives us light at night when we do need it. And a student wrote on an essay in school, he wrote that kids in colonial times had it very rough. They had to play their video games by candlelight. And Mrs. Morgan asked the class, what cultural contribution did the Phoenicians make? And the little boy answered, Phoenician blinds. On Glendora versus the DHCR, William Street and Judge Coppola, except that we did have a primary Tuesday, but I will not vote for Judge Coppola to be a judge again. I say he's a judge with no judgment, and I've said a lot of other things about his poor decisions, 2 of them that I'm appealing, and he's cost me a couple of $1,000s. I was injured, I went to court to get help, and I got injured worse. So I really have no trust in Judge Coppola's ability to be a judge. And where is that? That's all down in the basement bin, and it's waiting for an argument, oral argument before the appellate division, and that won't be around until January, maybe December 1985. Not this December, December 1985. Lydia too. Lydia Gallicano is resting in the bin because the New York State Court of Appeals, New York's highest court up in Albany, Judith Case Court, will not be making their decisions as to give me leave to appeal the bad decisions of the appellate division down in Brooklyn. That would be Miller and Santucci and Rosenblatt and Ritter. They won't give me that leave to appeal, if they give it to me at all, for it takes them 10 weeks, and so that brings it up to Thanksgiving 1994 this year. Are some school jokes. The teacher said to the class, "What is an indentured servant?" And Paul said, "An indentured servant is a slave with false teeth." The teacher said, Mrs. Morgan, "Robert, if we breathe oxygen during the day, what do we breathe at night?" And Robert said, "Nitrogen." And the teacher asked, "If the President of the United States were to die suddenly today, who would get the job?" And the little girl said, "A Democrat undertaker." About this last week, Thursday morning, I had seen the water gushing out of the brand new washing machine Wednesday night. So I called service directions and I asked them to come up and check it out. Of course, service directions is very good. So they came, and Johnny came to the door, and he always knocks on my door first before he goes down cellar. So I went down with him, just to help him out. And Roberta was there in the cellar doing the laundry. Now, I didn't look at her. I didn't speak to her. I never answered her. I never do. And so here is what she did.
Thursday.
Forgot your water. I had some ice water.
Thursday.
That's a lot to be thankful for. Now, Johnny, you're going to be subpoenaed as a witness for this abusive and insulting language that you saw when the case comes to court, and it'll come true. This is Roberta Welch. I'm not even looking at her. I will not talk to her. And the time is 11 a.m. 11 a.m. On September the 8th, 1994, Thursday. That is Roberta Welch. She said, "Mind your business." It was Roberta who had to mind her business. This did not concern her. This was between Johnny and myself. And she was interrupting and bellowing these insults. I just heard a noise at my door, and Roberta Walsh just went by. What that is all about is I really didn't have time. And Johnny said that the water wasn't coming from the washing machine, which I resent, because I saw it come from the washing machine, and I gave him my word that I saw it come from the washing machine. And for him to dispute that was entirely wrong, and I complained to service directions about that. But what he was talking about here, he said the water was coming because the set tubs were plugged up. So at that point, I said to Johnny, I'll go ask Caesar, who was still working in Young's old apartment in 2B, trying to get it in shape. I'll ask Caesar to come and talk to you about the set tubs. So the fight's between Johnny and Caesar. By Roberta Walsh. You know, nobody was looking at her, nobody was paying attention to her, but she kept up this tirade. She just never learns not to break the law. And so those were tortious acts number 880 to 889. 90 law breaking was by Nella Alpucci while I was videotaping, and it's on the tape. You heard it. She blasted the horn, and then she cackled her taunting laugh, and then when she got back into the car, she blasted the horn again. So that makes 890, 91, 92. Did for 3 hours at TCI in White Plains. We did programs 1559 up to 1563. We made a dumb mistake. We, the professional team here, Franco and Glendora, and we plugged one end of the wire into the Panasonic to record the VHS archive, and we plugged another end of another wire into the player. So naturally, we didn't get a dub. Franklin's brother did very well with the bypass surgery. It was triple bypass surgery, and he is doing very well. All log is, did that speed reading course really help your husband? Oh yes, he moves his lips much faster now. Our nicely newly painted, freshly painted bin came from somebody throwing a pail of water under the door, but it turned out not to be that at all. It was from the kitchen of apartment 1A. The water leaked through the floor into the cellar floor and rolled into our bin. So we apologize for that. Appeals and see if there's anything new, any new developments on my 4 appeals that I have down there. The one against Capel, that would be the Scott Lord one. The one against Judge Broderick, the Gannett antitrust one. The one against who's the other one? Oh yeah, Bryant. The one against Bryant, that Cablevision didn't violate my freedom of speech when they did. And the one against Broderick, saying that Title 47 of the United States Code, Section 531E, doesn't apply to Cablevision, that they're not a cable operator. Cablevision is, frankly, I don't think they have one since Cofault has gone. And of course, you switch it to another number and it rings and nobody answers. What can you do with corporate mismanagement? A man saw the program out in Long Island, Nassau County, Thursday night, September 8th, and he called the next morning. His name is Galkin. He lives in Oyster Bay. He has the same zip code as Cofault, maybe not co-fault, but certainly as Quinn and as Tada does and as Dolan does, 11771. So he wanted copies of the decision, and that takes a lot of time to do, and I didn't want to do it because we got too much to do, but finally this morning, a week later, I did it. All of my stocks are doing very well. Cablevision is up to 57 3/8. I bought it at something like 44. Gannett is up to, well, down to 49 7/8. They aren't doing as well as they were. They did get up as high as 54. Texaco is up to 62 3/4 flat. CBS is up to 347, and I paid $285 for it. Headed to Judge Wood against the law breaking of the defendants whose names you see on the screen. At 5 p.m. on Friday, September the 9th, Nella Alpucci and a blonde woman went by our south bedroom window and taunted Glendora, and then cut across the lawn by our southeast bedroom window and looked in. So we got a lot of reports to give Officer Fisher. The trouble is that Officer Fisher doesn't call you when you call him to call you. He doesn't come and take the reports. He takes them by telephone, and yet he doesn't come. And by the time he calls you, you've forgotten all about them because there are so many of them. You can't keep them straight. Returned from grocery shopping, that same blonde woman said, "Hello, Glendora." It was a taunt. And they were sitting on the wall like Humpty Dumpty, Daniel Walsh, Nella Alpucci, and Roberta Walsh. And they were obviously under substance abuse. In fact, they had left a beer bottle on my windowsill, my south bedroom windowsill that goes by the driveway walking east. There were fireworks coming from the White Plains High School, and they were pretty. And I was watching them out of the east window, and the blonde woman, who is a guest of Nella and for whom Nella is responsible, taunted, "Hello, Glendora." No answer. "How are you?" No answer. And rain dispersed the booze drinkers. And that same night, Daniel Walsh and Roberta Walsh parked their red truck deep into the shrubbery, pushing the shrubbery way back and injured it. And then Daniel Walsh drove a second vehicle behind that, two vehicles in the same parking space. And the vehicle was overhanging the cellar window. So now we're up to 900 tortious acts by the law-breaking Walshes, Alpuccis, and Larkins. Deliberate and malicious campaign of harassment and intimidation, intentional infliction of emotional distress, where the defendant's conduct is extraordinarily vindictive. These are all from the law books. Done without legal justification, that is, done maliciously, exceeding all bounds of decency, defendants acting with a desire to cause mental distress, and defendants knowing that mental distress would result. See, these are all violations of the law. The charge against these three families is intentional infliction of emotional disturbance with no physical effect. New York State adheres to the practice that an independent action can be brought on the basis of intentional infliction of emotional distress with no physical effect, along with the abusive and insulted language. You have to be a special kind of stupid, I say, to perpetuate this law-breaking. They just make the cause for eviction that much stronger. Damages to the landlord, damages to another tenant. They just make the court case that much stronger. They just make the trial that much easier. They are their worst enemies. On Saturday, John Porzio was on the property, and the only time he comes to the property is to show an apartment. And he showed an apartment to a man and a woman, and it looked to me like they were signing a lease. Glendora asked John Porzio if he were going to evict the Walsh family and the Alpucci family, John Porzio was nasty. He used to be the greatest landlord that we'd ever seen, and now he is not. And Patrick says if he ever has to have a heart transplant, he wants the heart of his landlord because it's never been used. Police records and a police report is missing. And they looked at it and they said, oh yes, it is missing. And here it is, and we'll have it for you when you come in. Glendora called Judge Wood's law clerk Friday at 4 p.m. to see if her papers were in order. Yes, they had gone to Chambers, and the decisions will probably be made in 2 weeks. So that would be from September the 9th, and 2 weeks would be about the end of September. And here's a police report, and it's written by Zampano. Glendora called headquarters to advise this department that a group of 3 youths ranging from 9 to 12 years or over were carrying pieces of cardboard into the field, and she also was not very something conversation they were having among themselves. The proper paperwork was filed out as to pertaining to the general order that was issued on January 5th, 1994 regarding this type of incident. And I think it's a little confusion there. That paperwork and that incident was about the leaf blowing. And this was another incident. Glendora states that her neighbor Daniel Walsh, this is by Edward Langstaff, Daniel Walsh of same address, drove into the driveway at a high rate of speed and blew the car horn several times. It was exactly 6 times under her window for no apparent reason. That would be harassment. From picking up the Walsh litter, Glendora's wastebasket smells so pungently of Walsh Alpucci tobacco butts that the smell will not come out, and there's another problem here. So we'll have to expend labor and money to get another one, but I didn't. I took it out in the sun, and the sun took the odor out, so I'm still using my old wastebasket. Franklin is looking over the Larkin insurance agreement. Franklin does not see where it covers personal injury, that is emotional disturbance. It doesn't cover that with no physical effect, nor does it cover intentionally inflicted personal injury. So I think that Michael Koza and Kevin Comboy and Alexander Karamitsos and now Leo McGrath do not have an insurance policy that covers Andrew and Kevin Larkin for personal injury. They just don't have it for the 2 reasons I just told you. It's not bodily injury, it's emotional disturbance with no physical effect. And they don't have coverage for another reason, because it's intentionally inflicted. It's not an accident. They're covered by general accident, but they're not covered by intentional infliction. So I don't think that when this goes to trial, and if they do lose, general accident may pay for defending them, but general accident will not pay the $7,000 plus the other costs and disbursements. Now, the Harrison Police Department, when we call up and say, may we speak to Andrew Larkin, the Harrison Police Department is giving us the dodge. Carl Narbison and the officers, the desk officers, give the dodge. They won't say that Andrew Larkin is there, is not there, or if he's coming in or if he's not coming in. And this is all recorded on audio tape. It's a very bad record. I told him I thought when we got rid of Police Chief Klein that we got rid of all of this lying and covering up with it. So this went on Saturday, and on Sunday, and on Monday. But by Monday, they had pretty much seen the light and given up the cover-up. The phone call was Officer Eric Fisher. The time was, excuse me, around 10:15 a.m. He always gets me right in the middle of videotaping. And so I gave him the list of harassments and law-breaking from September the 8th, 1994, Thursday, a week ago. You know, by the time he calls me, I lose track of all these things, and it's very hard to draw them up from memory. He again showed the defendant the pro-law-breaking bias. He doesn't believe what I tell him. He's got to be an expert as to who is telling the truth and who is lying, and he's not very good at it. And that's his job, to be an expert. And frankly, I think he does believe me, but he's not going to admit it. This great big log, by the way, went out Monday and Tuesday, and the cost on it was terrible. The cost to print it was something like $16, and the cost to post it was something like $5, so that's $21. The total hours on wall this week was 25, and then there was another $5 there, so the total expense was 30, and we end up the week with 904 tortious acts. But I don't remember where I was when Eric called. So I told Eric Fisher, you know, that he had to be an expert as to who is telling the truth and who is not telling the truth. And it just, you know, these 900 acts have happened. They've been documented. The White Plains Police have done nothing. I even pointed out to Eric Fisher this morning that he lets my car get keyed, criminal mischief, $600. He doesn't do a thing about it. He says, well, we have to see it done. Well, he could call people in, and he could go and interrogate them, couldn't he? He could say to Daniel Walsh, where were you? Did you see it happen? Did you do it? He could say that to Roberta Walsh, Nella Alpucci, and Theo Alpucci, and James Walsh, couldn't he? And a good policeman would do that, and a good policeman, a good detective would find out who did do it. These are Franklin's shorthand notes taken at the conference with Judge Wood Tuesday. Franklin yesterday took this great big minutes of the oral deposition with Michael Kozer, where he did such a bungling job, and had them reduced, and got 4 on a page. Maybe those will go out, maybe they won't. It will be very expensive to send them out. It will be about another $20. So that's a job that has to be done. Those have to be typed. Because I really can't read shorthand, can you? But then you probably can't read my writing. Now, we'll go on to the log for this week, starting September the 12th, 1994, Monday. A long account for half an hour or less on 5:30 p.m. Channel 14. No, Channel 16. No, Channel 14. That would be White Plains Public Access. And it was all about the law-breaking of Daniel Walsh, Roberta Walsh, James Walsh, Nella Alpucci, Theo Alpucci, Kevin Larkin, and Andrew Larkin. And I had to list what to accomplish at the Wood conference. And the Wilson people sent me 2 more copies of this deposition with Koza. And the program Monday night was about what happened after James Walsh was served, as Judge Wood insisted he be served personally. What happened after that. That's paperwork. 6, the wall log was distributed to 14 apartments here. We packed up for the conference with Judge Wood. The wall file is this big. This big. We fed the blue jays and the squirrels. And how do you hyphenate squirrels? You can't. It's one syllable. You can't hyphenate it. There's a word you can't hyphenate. There's no going to school noise anymore the way there was so excessively when Kevin Larkin was here. It's very nice around here without the Larkins. The place is much improved without him. The Harrison police have stopped their cover-up. Andrew Larkin does work there, and he works midnight to 8. So I guess that brings us up to the Judge Wood conference. Now, as always, this is not fair. This crazy law firm, Wilson, Babe, Koza, Comboy, Cousins, they send one lawyer over to cover 4 judges. And Leo McGrath, instead of being there at 9:15 a.m. as Franklin and I were there, and the court stenographer was there, instead of being there, he was in Judge Colabella's courtroom. And so what did we end up doing? We waited an hour and a quarter. I had requested that a stenographer be present because I may want the minutes of that conference. I may want to buy them. They don't come unless you request them. At the last conference, there wasn't one. So this conference, I made sure there was a court stenographer there. There were about 18 people in the hallway waiting for Judge Wood for the conference. One woman, a lawyer, said, "Aren't you the one who was written about in the New York Law Journal?" She says, "I read that with great interest." And we talked about it a long time. I was reviewing the law in preparation for the conference, but I stopped that and I talked to her. And she says, "I have a friend who watches that program every time it's on. He just sits there and watches the whole thing through." And it's true, a lot of people watch the program, particularly a lot of lawyers, a lot of clerks, and a lot of judges. But then a lot of consumers who are being ripped off, a lot of people who are dissatisfied with the police performance, a lot of people who are dissatisfied with the court performance, a lot of people whose rights are being violated. A lot of people watch the program. I've been on the NBC television network, coast to coast, 19 different times. And really, I think as many people talk to me about this public access program as they do about the high and mighty broadcast network. I looked in on Judge Colabella, and a lawyer was saying that he thought that the opposite side should pay for the 3rd deposition. And Judge Colabella says that's not up for you to decide. The Silverman courtroom was empty. I did talk to Judge Silverman last week and told him that my program was back on cable TV in Long Island, that the first program was on Thursday, and that in October I'm going to get my original time slot back, 10 p.m. Fridays, Channel 25. Finally, Leo McGuire, after being an hour and 15 minutes late, finally got in there. He's small, and he's sort of young, and he didn't say a word. He came into the conference, he didn't say a word. Judge, it was on the calendar that this was a Glendora conference, that Glendora was pro se, and that I can't find the calendar for you that John Wood gave me to show you. And anyway, also I said, Judge Wood, this is a conference. I believe that the discovery is over and that I certify that this trial is ready, that this case is ready for trial, and I wish that you would certify that it's ready for trial and that I can get my note of issue in and my demand for jury in. I just said that to Eric Fisher. He says, "You're going to have a jury?" Well, naturally, Eric, naturally. So they can see the videotapes, and so they can see the abuse, and so they can hear the witnesses. I said that I had 3 motions before you. One is that Carlucci is not fit, and that he should be taken off my case, and that he should recuse himself, and that you, Judge Wood, should be the sole decision maker on these motions and on everything else. I got the court stenographer's card. I asked Leo McGrath for a card, and he didn't have one. I said that the second motion was that this law firm, Kevin Comboy, should be sanctioned for not getting the insurance agreement to me. They did finally get it to me. After it was requested on July the 26th, they got it to me on something like May the 13th. And this is comical. They sent it airborne express from Hillside Avenue in Elmsford, right on the border of White Plains, to White Plains, Main Street. They sent that airborne express. What did I tell you about this law firm? Wilson, Cousins, Comboy, Koza, Bave, Karamitsos. And I guess we weren't with Judge Wood any more than, say, 10 minutes. And I said my last motion was that I should win against Larkin because they did not answer for 2 months after they got the summons with notice and complaint. Judge Wood, all he said was, all right, he says, I will have to decide these motions, and I will then decide what we do after that. That's really about all it came to. He looked wonderful. He looked so good. He must be 74, or close to 75. And he just looks terrific. The white hair and his tonus and his physique, he just looks great. And he was wearing a very handsome black suit. At first when I looked in, I thought he was wearing a black robe, but it wasn't. It was a very fine-looking black suit. So I asked and told the court stenographer that I might want a copy of his minutes. And so we left there, and it was about 11. And I wanted to go over to the federal courthouse at 101 East Post Road, the Southern District, the White Plains Courthouse, to see Judge Broderick was in. And you know, he hasn't been in for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks. So I wanted to see him. And he was doing a sentencing. And so I went over and I saw it. And it was very sad. It was the United States of America versus Matero, and it was about income tax evasion. And about 10 members of Matero's family was there. And we waited and waited and waited and waited because the lawyer for Matero and the lawyer for the government were in Judge Broderick's chambers making deals. They call them conferencing. And so finally, we spent about an hour and a half waiting there. And finally, Judge Broderick came out, and he's very, very feeble. And he's very, very weak. And he's very tired, and he just feels terrible. And he came on the bench with a cane, and he sentenced Matero. And the sentence was as follows. 9 months under the custody of the United States Attorney General, that means jail. Nine months confined to his home with an electronic monitoring device. It's the same thing they did to Walker, remember? A fine of $250,000 and 2 years of community service. And Judge Broderick said that this was a very serious crime, income tax evasion, that he had given many sentences in his life, and he says this was one of the most lenient that he had ever given. Then he got up and got off the bench and went out. And Donna Hilbert really took care of everything else. She got all of the papers together, and she got the people to sign them, and she told them what to do, and she, Judge Broderick had asked the probation officer if it was okay. So the next thing that Matero had to do was to go to the marshals and go to the probation officer. And the sentence doesn't even start. Judge Broderick said it should start in the middle of October, but the lawyer got 2 weeks on that. It's not even going to start until November 1st. Okay, and then we had to hasten around and do some errands. And I went to the United States Post Office, and the notice, my notice of motion to file an appendix with my brief for the Dolan-Broderick appeal, Cablevision. I had not signed it, so they sent it back for me to sign, and so then I had to sign it and mark that the original, and then get 3 copies of it, and then I had to send the signed one down to the United States Court of Appeals, along with an affidavit of service that I had sent a signed copy to Kalaji at 230 Park Avenue, the lawyer for Cablevision, on the very bad decision that Judge Broderick made. And then we had to really hike her fast and get to the Scarsdale Post Office and go fill up the Lincoln with gasoline and go down the Bronx River Parkway, down the over the cross county and down the Deegan onto the FDR. And some fool had come barreling down the FDR, or barreling up because he was going north, with a tractor-trailer truck. Can you imagine being that dumb? And of course it got lodged in an underpass, or an overpass, you can call it, an overpass. And so they had to shut the FDR from 42nd Street all the way up to 59th Street, so you can imagine what a mess that made. We got to the Brooklyn Bridge, and over the Brooklyn Bridge we made a left on Tillery Street, a right on Flatbush, and we went out to Flatbush Avenue to East 88th Street, where we picked up a check for $650 for ABC Tank, which is going on NBC. I'm putting ABC Tank on WNBC TV. He'll be on Saturday between 3 and 5 p.m. in the movie. We didn't want him to go on Sunday because that's the New York Giants over on Fox, and we didn't want him up against the New York Giants. And then after getting the check, we went up around where the Appellate Division, 2nd Department is on Monroe Place, because they have such good food up around there, and we had some treats, went back over the Brooklyn Bridge, arrived at WNBC TV at 8 p.m. The man who takes care of the door there, his name is Michael Ahern. He's our favorite and has been for years, and he always opens the door for me to get out of the Lincoln, and opens the 30 Rockefeller Plaza door. And I went in and I went to the security there where David Letterman used to be, and I said, may I please take this videotape upstairs to the 7th floor security so they can deliver it tomorrow morning to the sales department. Yes, sure, go ahead. And I did that. So I got the videotape in and their checks for the airtime in by 8:30 p.m. and then we came home and got here about 9:30 p.m. Here's a police report by Edward Langstaff that approximately 10:15 a.m. on September 2nd, Friday, Glendora states that her neighbors Daniel Walsh and his son were playing football outside 21 Greenwich Avenue, and that's against the landlord's rules, and Glendora decided to videotape this, and Mr. Walsh became angry and confronted her at her apartment. Glendora further stated that he pushed himself inside the apartment. No, he didn't, not inside the hall, the apartment hall door, but not inside my apartment, and pushed her up against the wall, and then left the area without further incident. Glendora, this is on September 9th, 1994. Glendora stated she went to check on her storage bin in the basement at 5:15 a.m. and found water on the floor at the bin. She feels someone deliberately poured it through the door. No damage was done to her filing boxes. No, that's the one that, it could have been that, but I think more probably it was the, in apartment 1A, that the pipes were leaking and that the water came down through the basement ceiling onto the floor. And my judgment is I would favor that it was the apartment 1A water, and I would say that it was not vandalism. Glendora states that yesterday, September the 8th, 1994, this is Officer Price, site at approximately 13:30 hours while she was videotaping in her apartment. Nella Alpucci of apartment 4B deliberately honked her horn twice. This was. It's not in the report, but it was twice. Yes, it is in the report. To interrupt Glendora's taping. So that's done. Judgment. I say it was the leak rather than vandalism that damaged our cellar bin. And I make a public apology for that, if that is what happened. Here is another report by Officer's Site, and this was on 9/10/94 Saturday. Respondent to the above, that's Glendora. Location on a report of a car parked the sidewalk in front of 21 Greenwich Avenue. Upon my arrival, there wasn't any cars on the sidewalk. Well, that's wrong. There was a car overhanging the sidewalk. The car belonged to Daniel Walsh. And the car was overhanging the sidewalk, and the videotape shows that. You saw the videotape last week. The car was overhanging the sidewalk. Franklin picked up the police reports on Tuesday, and I want to insert that while I was waiting around for Judge Broderick to come to the bench, I did get on and see Judge Bryant, and Judge Bryant was saying that the witness on the stand was not a custodian of the bank's money and records, and that he could step down, and the lawyer was saying, oh yes he is. And Judge Bryan says, you said he was a legal advisor, and I thought he had some kind of legal training. And the lawyer says, he is a custodian. He says, I just want to point out that the bank doesn't call them custodians. They call them legal advisors. And Judge Bryant opposed that and told the witness to step down, and the lawyer protested again, and Judge Bryant told the witness to step down the third time. So there's a big fight there. He says this is a very serious matter and a very important matter. So I watched Judge Bryant a little while. Judge Cattell, as I say, has gone to Connecticut. He's no longer there. I rang the doorbell to Judge Bryant's chambers, and I said, is Maureen Martin here? And the woman says she doesn't work here anymore. And I said, has she gone to Satterley Stevens, Burke & Burke, which is a law firm for Cablevision. This is the law firm that Kalaji is associated with. And the woman at the door says, yes, that's where she's going eventually, but I think she's taking some time off. And what I protest to there is that at the time my case was before Judge Bryant's. She, Maureen Martin, was a law clerk. And now it turns out, and Kalaji was working for Stevens, Satterley Stevens, Burke & Burke. Okay, so I think it's just mighty queer that Maureen Martin, who was the law clerk at that time, is now going to go to work for the Cablevision law firm, Satterley Stevens, Burke & Burke. And then I went to Judge Fox's courtroom. Nothing was going on there. And I saw some jurors waiting around. I did see Lorraine Lombardo, and I did see Andrew, who are clerks. And my favorite clerk, Julia, has gone to North Carolina, so I miss her. And I went to see Irene Pepetto, but she had gone home with a headache. And I went and watched the new bankruptcy judge. His name is John Connolly, who was sitting in the chair that our beloved Judge Schwartzberg used to sit in before he died. And so I watched him, and he's very good looking. He has a nice voice, and he's left-handed. And he listens patiently. He comes from Minnesota. He doesn't live here, you know. He only sits Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And he comes from Minnesota. And he makes that commute. He's a federal bankruptcy judge. And I went and saw Ken Freya, who is the clerk of the bankruptcy court in White Plains, United States Bankruptcy Court. So I think that covers Tuesday. Wednesday, let's see what's going on here with the wall log. County Courthouse Tower, underground garage, parking garage. We were walking toward the Lincoln, and a horn tooted at us. And it was Rose. She's the head court stenographer there, and she's also the head of the union. And she wasn't driving her beautiful vintage Plymouth, which I think is something like 20 years old, that she just spent $5,000 on. Plymouth convertible, red. Oh, it's perfect condition. It sounds perfect, and it looks perfect. And she wasn't driving that. And I said, what? Why is it? What is this black car you're driving? And it was a Cadillac, and a sporty Cadillac. And she says, no, I have 3 cars. 3 cars, you're going to be in the garage all your life. We used to have 3 cars, and we were in the garage all of our lives. So we got it down to 1 car. And even with 1 car, I'm still in my garage most of my life. So those were Rose, and they're beautiful cars. Whew. Boy, does she know how to keep a car up. I thought I was doing great with a 1980 Lincoln. 1980 Lincoln. It still bucks. And I've asterisk, and I've asterisk, and I've asterisk, and I've had my car there over and over again, and they can't get rid of that buck. And it's been there ever since they put in the rebuilt engine. By the way, there was a man on the TV last night talking about rebuilt engines. Doing a commercial, I mean. So, I called Scarsdale Ford, and Frank Picara down there told me, when I told him about replacing the engine, he says, I hope they didn't mess up the sensors, because you know that was the first year that they had computers in a Lincoln, and they had these sensors all over the engine so that these sensors could monitor how much gas was needed in various parts, and that's how we got the fuel up to 18 miles per gallon, which is great for a Lincoln, a 4,000-pound car. And so now I'm beginning to think that Frank really is onto something there. And Frank says, I hope they didn't cut any wires. So as soon as I get a chance, I'm going down there and have somebody drive it, which I hope is this afternoon. Okay, I called Lori Pitka at Wilson and thanked her for sending me 2 more copies of the deposition minutes, and she wants me to sign the original. I got to list all the corrections. There are quite a few corrections that have to be made, quite a few. That I told you about is Glendora versus Walsh, Daniel et al. Pro se, plaintiff pro se, defendant Wilson, Babe, Comboy, Koza, and Kuziga, it should be cousins. And the other lawyer for the defendants is Goodrich and Bendich, but Bendich didn't come. It's interesting, you know. Comboy came the first conference, and after he had jousted with Glendora, he didn't want to come back and do the deposition. And so Koza did the deposition, and after he had jousted with Glendora, he didn't want to come to the conference. And Alexander Karamazov, a long time ago, after jousting with Glendora, didn't want to do it again. And then now they sent Leo McGuire. So, and it says other, not for the above, but what he should have down there is that this is the intentional infliction of emotional disturbance with no physical effect. That's what should be down there. And here's another police report. No, that one's done. You read that one. Here's another one. Here's another one. No, you read that. You read that. Okay. So now we're up to today. Oh no, yesterday. I got to tell you one more taunting, one more harassment. Franklin and I, when I came home from editing at White Plains yesterday, White Plains Public Access on Martine Avenue, Lexington. I was getting out of the car. Franklin got out of the car. We came into the Building 1A. We came into Building A together. Roberta was there when we drove up and puffing the omnipresent cigarette and fouling the air. And I didn't look at Roberta, and I didn't say anything to Roberta, neither did Franklin. And Daniel Walsh is hanging out the second floor window, and he makes a taunting laugh and says an insult. And Roberta is down on the ground, and she is laughing in their taunting way, the way they do. So that's number 907, tortious act, harassment. Now, On this property, against the building code and against the lease, there is an abandoned stove out on the, right up against the wall of the Rutherford Street side. It looks terrible. There is an abandoned sink. There is an abandoned refrigerator. And now, showing up yesterday, is an abandoned toilet. Now, all of that is against all of the rules and the laws. It makes the place look like a junkyard, and it's dumpy, and John Porzio should not allow that. And now, on Wall, we have to wait for Judge Wood's decision. We have to serve a legal paper on Andrew Larkin at his new address, and you have to go down to the post office and find out what his new address is. There's a new law in effect. You can't find out a forwarding address unless it's for a legal paper or unless you're the police. And we have to list the corrections that have to be made in the deposition minutes and submit those. This thing about the poor Scotty Klein, I always felt that the Harrison police were the cause of his death. There was no doubt in my mind at all. And they got excused from it. They had a hearing and they got excused from it, but the family sued, and I think the family is right. Those Harrison policemen were Richard DeBuono, Lieutenant David Hall, and Detective Michael Pinot. Castilia is the village attorney for the town of Harrison. They went through Gallagher Bassett, the same insurance company that I went through when White Plains, when I got that payment from White Plains for leaving the 2x4s in the entrance of the library garage and puncturing a tire. You remember that? Yes, you do. I reported the whole thing to you. Okay. And Klein's lawyer was Francis DeCaro. And that is what happened on the wall breaking of Daniel Walsh, Roberta Walsh, James Walsh, Nella Alpucci, Theo Alpucci, Andrew Larkin, and Kevin Larkin on the week of September the 8th to September the 15th. And now it is time for jokes. A kindergarten teacher is somebody who knows how to make little things count. A kindergarten teacher is somebody who knows how to make little things count. And Mrs. Morgan asked Philip, what are the three great American parties? And Philip said Democrat, Republican, and Tupperware. Yes, a little learning is a dangerous thing, but it beats total ignorance. The Seven Dwarfs syndrome, it is reported, afflicts our schools today. 1 out of 7 kids is dopey. Governor Mario Cuomo. Nicholas Colabella, JSC, Westchester County. Joseph J. Trafficanti, Jr., Office of Court Administration, Albany. E. Leo Malonis, Chief Administrative Judge, Office of Court Administration. Angelo Ingracia, Chief Administrative Judge, 9th and 10th Judicial Districts. Gary Casella, Grievance Committee. Gerald Stern, Commissioner on Judicial Conduct. Chief Judge Judith Kay. Elizabeth Hubbard, Modern Courts. Raymond Powell, Law Clerk for Judge Colabella. And Glendora's TV audience, that's you. September the 11th, 1994. There is no joy in Mudville. It is a bad day for Circuit Court reform. It is a heartbreaker for Madam Justice. You want to know what Judge Colabella condones? Lying, stealing, cheating, lying to volunteers that if you monitor the courts and you write your reports and you wear out your car and spend your money on gasoline, parking, postage, and copy, and modern courts will publish a report at the end of the monitoring period. Stealing a volunteer's money, time, and labor, cheating a volunteer out of the promise made to said volunteer. You do all this, and at the end of the monitoring period, modern courts will publish a report. You expend all this time, money, and labor for court reform, and we, modern courts, Elizabeth Hubbard, Alan Beck, and Michelle Mayapath, will publish a report for court reform. Let me ask you a simple question. Would Glendora and Franklin have worked 100 hours monitoring courts and doing the related work and travel if modern courts had said in the beginning they would not publish a report at the end of the monitoring period? What is your answer? Let me ask you another question. Did Judge Colabella read Glendora's complaint, her motion for default judgment, her motion to compel discovery, her cross motion to deny the defendant's motion to dismiss her reply affidavit? Did Judge Colabella read this decision before he signed it? Who made the decision? Did Judge Colabella? Or did ex parte, double-crossing, prejudice, law clerk Powell? The judges in the Westchester County Courthouse do not do their work. The workload falls on the law clerks. The judges, therefore, become pathologically dependent on the law clerks. The law clerks become psychotically arrogant, abusive, and abrasive. This is a common focus of talk around the 20 floors of the Westchester County Courthouse Tower. The arrogance of the law clerks. Glendora has never yet met a qualified one. A long list of them have cost Glendora more than $10,000 in their infuriating ineptitude. Devlin, Thomasina Berg, Pittari, Santucci, Jack Sullivan, now gone, Louis DiCarlo, Jack Sharkner, Howie Leitner, Andrew Belinsky, Paul Carlucci, for Judges Burroughs, Nikolai Ruskin, now gone, Donovan Garayan, now gone. I didn't vote for him. Rosado, now gone. Fredman, Coppola, I'm not going to vote for him. Silverman and Colabella. You want to know why Raymond Powell's decision was prejudiced and premeditated? When he ex parte double-crossed Glendora and scuttled her discovery conference on these cover-up defendants, Hubbard, Beck, Mayapath, and modern courts, Glendora protested on the TV and all over New York courtland. All over New York courtland. So he was out to get her. Glendora also stood up for her right in the face of the Neanderthal rudeness of Stephen Kellner and T.J. Mallon. See Infra. Now, this I'm not going to read to you. That's what happened the day that I went to see the court clerk, Stephen Kellner. I didn't go to see him. I went to see Judge. He's the criminal court clerk. I went to see his civil court clerk, who was very uncivil, T.J. Mallon. And this is what happened. I've read this all to you. His great rudeness, unbelievable rudeness, which was made a public record. And then we find out that Stephen Kellner is not T.J. Mallon, and so we apologize. But that didn't make any difference to T.J. Mallon. He continued to be very rude and abrasive and abusive. And here is a communication to Judge Colabella that I believe never got to him. It was blocked by his court clerks. And here is another one. That's page 10, and here's page 11. How Glendora was double-crossed by Judge Colabella and his clerks. And I read that to you on TV, and that was way back in June. And it tells a whole story of how Judge Colabella gave me his word that the defendants would be there at the next conference. And in the meantime, the defendants went behind my back to the Powell law clerk, and Judge Colabella never knew anything about it. And they canceled my conference and made a motion so as to escape the discovery, because they couldn't stand the heat of the discovery where they would have to tell the truth. And this is what happened, and I read you that on TV, and that was back in June, the middle of June. Now, let me go on. This is my protest, which was written this week, second week of September. Nicholas Colabella is another Westchester Supreme Court judge with no judgment, like Judge Coppola. Glendora will not vote for Judge Coppola this fall and urges everybody not to vote for Judge Coppola. Why? People ask. Glendora answers, because he is a judge with no judgment. Last year, Glendora did not vote for Judge Garayan for the same reason. Raymond Powell's decision reeks with vindication. block your nasal passages. And here is his decision. Unilaterally, for the defendants, it's okay to lie, steal, and cheat. It's okay to go back on your word. It's okay to break faith. It's okay to be in bad faith. And furthermore, he rules that I have to pay costs of the motion. And furthermore, he calls my case frivolous. What is frivolous is their decision. And furthermore, he rules that I have to pay attorney's costs. And he rules that my motion is denied. So, as one young lawyer said to me, that's hammering. He says, that's the worst hammering that you ever got. He says he couldn't have hammered you even harder. And this is true. And why? Because of spite. Because he didn't like it. Because I pointed out what he did. Double cross and backstabbing and manipulation. Ex parte. And Glendora says that this piece of rubbish, meaning that decision written by Powell and signed by Colabella, is going to cost Glendora another $500 when she appeals it in every part, October the 8th, 1994. It's another decision as juvenile as Thomasina Burke's. Now take a look at this. Glendora and Franklin go out and volunteer to help court reform, desperately needed as evidenced by what you read above. And she gets penalized $100 here and another $100 there. It's a nice ethic that this crowd stands up for, isn't it? They stand up for bad faith. Modern courts, Mayapath, Hubbard, Beck, committed bad faith. That's the side that Judge Colabella is on. Glendora has said many times on TV that the worst consumer ripoff in America today is the courts. The worst consumer ripoff in America today is the courts. This lawsuit has cost Glendora $400 so far, and what does she get? Zilch. So, are you going to the funeral of Madam Justice and Sir Court Reform? Does she get? Zilch. So, are you going to the funeral of Madam Justice and Sir Court Reform? Are you going to pay your last respects? 3 more judges concur that the courtroom air is foul. Judge Colabella, let me read you what he said. Let me see, Marbach. Who are they quoting here? I wrote the matter mainly to give Marbach said. I've never had an allergy in my life, but frequently my eyes actually water here and they get red. Lange said the lack of fresh air and oxygen in his 10th floor courtroom often caused him lightheadedness and made it really a fight to stay awake, quote unquote. It's incredible, Lange said. You step into the stairwell and it's like you've been revived. Colabella said the problem was especially acute in the building's smaller courtrooms like the one over which he presides on the 16th floor. You get 45 to 50 people in there to pick a jury with the court officers, the defendant, and everyone else, and there's no air left, he said. So Glendora says, Judge Colabella must be right about this. Something has to be causing these bad decisions from the Westchester County Courthouse. And as Glendora has said so many times on TV, the reason the appellate division is a year and a half behind is that there are so many bad judges in the Westchester County Supreme Court. Then, of course, we have the rank pro se prejudice. Judges and law clerks who don't take the United States Constitution or the New York State Constitution seriously. A person has a right to defend himself, whether they like it or not. A person has a right to defend himself. But these people have to go with the flow. People are getting tired of the lying and crookedness of lawyers. People are going to be many, many, many more pro ses. It's another ripoff. The prices are outrageous, and the lawyers' work in most cases is very, very poor. They really don't know the law. Raymond Powell makes only one citation in his odious decision. Believe that? There's just one citation. One citation of a case. Judge Colabella is never on the bench at 9:30 a.m. The courtroom piles up with lawyers, and he doesn't get there until at 10:30 a.m. Nobody ever knows when he will be there, and no explanation is ever given when he does get there late. Then he walks off the bench for a half an hour or more at a time, and again there's no explanation. Judge Colabella never saw these cover-up defendants, nor their lawyer, who is named Edmund Purvis over in Larchmont. He never saw them eyeball to eyeball. But Glendora was there every conference. However, it doesn't make any difference. The crooks win and the good guys lose. And Judge Colabella cannot even keep his own orders. See page 22. He made an order for discovery and he didn't keep it, and it never happened. And that's okay. No further motions without leave of the court, Judge Colabella wrote, and ordered. And behind Glendora's back, Raymond Powell lets them make a motion. Figure that one out. He can't even keep his own word. And behind Judge Colabella's back also, the judge wanted to know why the defendants were not there, and Judge Colabella said about Powell, he never told me. He never told me either. And so I go back to the next conference, and the defendants aren't there as Judge Colabella promised me. And so I asked Judge Colabella, why aren't the defendants here as you promised me? And Judge Colabella said, I talked to my law clerk. Judges get the pay, they have no say, law clerks have the sway. You call this a justice system? Look at all the wild claims Powell makes in his decision. It's all his fault. He killed the discovery. Glendora would have got the truth out of those defendants, those tortfeasors. Glendora's husband is 75 years old. He is a senior citizen. He is a D-Day veteran of World War II. Please read what he has to say about Powell's lack of appreciation of a volunteer. I tell you folks, don't ever volunteer for modern courts. For giving 100 hours, your money, your car, your labor, and you will be spat upon by Hubbard, Beck, Mayapath, modern courts, Powell, and Judge Colabella. Okay, this is what Franklin, a D-Day veteran, says about a volunteer. Oh, from a lawyer saying he didn't believe that lawyers should advertise on TV. Well, maybe he's right. But if lawyers are going to get clients anyway, it's a good thing to be on TV because you can make up your mind pretty well when you see him and hear him talk. What kind of a person he is. Pretty well. Now, where were we? Oh yes, we were reading what Franklin says about a volunteer. See, they ruled against me because I was a volunteer. Is that nice? Isn't that nice? A volunteer has even more basis for decent treatment by an organization than a paid employee. A volunteer contributes to a cause with no return except the satisfaction of serving and advancing the cause. The volunteer deserves the recognition and consideration for time and effort expended. and this comes through the intended report promised when the project started. An organization doesn't or shouldn't brush aside earnest efforts. That was the modern court's transgression, and the court should require that the organization meet its responsibility. That is what Glendora's action asked. Modern courts and the New York Supreme Court don't seem to grasp that the success and effectiveness of a majorly volunteer effort lies in the enthusiasm and quality of the volunteers. This is a very poor decision, a baseless decision. I am very sorry the court did this to Glendora, who has a legitimate case for being recompensed for wrong treatment. If Glendora is a disgruntled volunteer, as the decision states, it is because modern courts deceived her. That's by Franklin Buell. Glendora states that the motion made by the defendants was unauthorized. Judge Colabella said no more motions. It was done ex parte, which is improper, behind Glendora's back. This motion cannot be decided for the summary judgment until there is discovery and defendants have been fugitives from discovery. Naturally they are. People like that cover up. Defendants should be sanctioned. Just answer one question. Would Glendora and Franklin have spent all those hours, about 100, and done all that work of monitoring courts and writing reports, and expended all of that money on parking, gasoline, car repair, envelopes, and postage and copying if defendants had said they would not be publishing a report at the end of the monitoring period? If they had said that in the beginning, would we have done all that? No. They said it at the end after we'd put in all that time and money. Defendants asked for volunteers to monitor and said, we are going to publish a report. They didn't do it. It's as simple as that. And Judge Colabella has to rule in favor of the bad guys. In this report, I put my complaint, which you have already read, all the bad things that these four defendants that did modern courts, Beck, Mayapath, and Hubbard. I also put in there my affirmation in vehement opposition to their answer. All of the things that they did bad. And I also put in there that Judge Colabella's order that they come for discovery and that they do the discovery. And defendants refuse to do the discovery. They refuse to comply with Judge Colabella's orders, but that is okay with Judge Colabella. And here are the penalties for refusing to comply with the discovery demands. That's okay with Judge Colabella. Defendants are too incompetent to answer Glendora's cross motion, but that's okay with Judge Colabella. He lets them win. This is how they get their monitors. Don't ever answer anything you see in the newspaper like that, asking for volunteers, because you will be abused and you will be beaten down and you'll end up spending your money and your time and your life, and then you'll just be kicked around in the gluteus maximus. I enclose here a Purvis's stupid letter as to the irrelevant, repetitive, and libelous statements made by Glendora in both her affidavit in opposition to defendant's motion, and then he goes into this cliche, we will not dignify them with a reply. Isn't that great? Isn't that great? Isn't that worth 3 years of law school and 4 years of undergraduate school? Don't vote for Colabella. This upside-down decision hurts people all around. The Westchester Supreme Court is hurt by it. The court reform is hurt by it, and volunteers are hurt by it. It hurts Glendora very deeply. She used to respect Judge Colabella. We have known each other since 1990. Glendora used to tell him jokes. He was a good audience. Now she never wants to see him again. One thing is for sure. You can't trust a judge. Judges are two-faced. They sell their souls just the way lawyers do. Why not? They're lawyers. Judges are paid $103,000 a year to make decisions, and they let insolent law clerks do their work for them. It's a dereliction of duty. What is Powell's background? Where is he qualified to ruin people's lives? Spite? Ex parte? Double cross? Behind people's back? His work is a disgraceful miscarriage of justice. Glendora was manipulated. He writes in his decisions disgruntled. Well, where is his proof for such a claim? It's an assumption. I never met the man. And he's never met me. So how can he make assumptions like that? You can see he doesn't know justice. Glendora had a right that modern courts violated, but he would rather stand up for what is wrong. What is the definition of harass, Mr. Powell? He doesn't even know that. Harass. A person engages in a course of conduct or repeatedly commits acts which alarm or seriously annoy another person and which have no legitimate purpose. That's the definition of harass, Mr. Powell. You're telling me that Glendora didn't have any legitimate purpose? 100 hours of work and all that money spent? That's not a legitimate purpose for them to break their law, break their rule, to break their word, and to go back on their word? That's not a legitimate purpose, Mr. Powell. How do you get your exercise? Jumping to conclusions? Show the world where Glendora had no legitimate purpose. And also, has he proved that Glendora engaged in a course of conduct or repeatedly committed acts which alarmed and seriously annoyed another person with no legitimate purpose? Has he proved that? I have no interest in annoying them. I have no interest in alarming them. One bad law clerk, Jack Sullivan, is out. Glendora learned that today. Now let's get rid of the rest of them. What is frivolous? Glendora's action is not frivolous, but Mr. Powell's decision is frivolous. Lack of merit of plaintiff's claim, quote unquote, should have been apparent to a true law clerk. But this law clerk I'm charging with arrogance and with ignorance. Glendora was abused and injured, but how could you expect a spiteful law clerk who knows nothing about justice to comprehend that? Your decision is totally without merit. Quote, discovery was properly held in abeyance, unquote, is not true. You manipulated Glendora's day in court. She never had one. They, the defendants, made a motion for summary judgment just to get rid of the discovery because they couldn't face the discovery. They couldn't face the truth. And Powell writes, nor can plaintiff feign ignorance of the law in persisting in this action after she was presented with the applicable law by defendants in their motion for summary judgment. The defendants presented no law at all. How prejudiced, obnoxious, and arrogant can you get? Your ignorance is not feigned, Mr. Powell. It is blatant. Raymond Powell, you have written your spite and disqualification in granite with his decision. It is going all over New York courtland and on 10 cable TV systems. Voters have to know. And why should this decision take 6 months? It is not worth 6 minutes. And then again, we don't have a real court. We have everything on paper. No discovery, no trial, no conferences. It is a correspondence school. It's not a court. We have the monolithic slowness of the courts because of time off. The judges don't work from Thanksgiving week to Christmas. They have a summer hiatus. They have 16 holidays. This decision didn't get to Glendora until 5 days before the deadline. A judge has 60 days to make a decision. The return date was July 15th. Glendora gets this around July 10th. Purvis calls up and says, I'll report you. Now, how dumb can you get? Who's he going to report me to? To whom is he going to report me? He writes Judge Colabella that this is a court of equity when the CPLR courts are not courts of equity. You don't have courts of equity in a state where they have civil laws practice and rules. He calls it a brief when it's a memorandum. It's not a brief until you go before the appellate division. He submits interrogatories when it's personal injury, and he should submit a bill of particulars. And he wins because the judge and law clerks are worse. Stephen Kellner conducts his personal business from the Westchester County Courthouse. Glendora witnesses Judge Colabella talk a youth out of his right to a trial, a precious right like that, a trial by jury, so as to speed things up for Judge Colabella. And the bad decision will go before 4 appellate division judges. It will be in the archives forever. It will be on TV for years. Frivolous decision? Yes, and capricious, and rotten to the bottom. God knows, and your conscience knows. Here's the discovery and production of documents and things for inspection, Rule 3120. Here is the report that Modern Courts wrote about Judge Colabella. As badly as a person could be. A, cost. B, frivolous. C, attorney's fees. D, dismiss. Glendora should never have entrusted her case to Judge Colabella and his clerks, Powell, Mallon, and Kellner. The sign on the door says Supreme Court. So, you believe the sign? His title is Justice. It should be Nicholas Colabella in Justice, Supreme Court. He wears a black robe. He looks like a judge. He sits on a bench. But it is a charade. Worse, it is a public disgrace. Do not vote for Colabella next election. A great district attorney he would have made. He was considered for district attorney, along with Pirro. It was bad when Vergari retired. It was bad faith. Colabella and cohorts should be out on the street. And Colabella ruled on the matter of the bad faith of Hubbard and Beck and Mayapath and Moore and Courts. Bad faith is okay by him. Does Colabella think that this is justice done to the satisfaction of society? It is sick. Glendora watched Judge Colabella do trial assignment one morning in courtroom 800. He was ferocious, ill-tempered, rude, and he violated the Judicial Conduct Code. Don't ever volunteer, folks. You go out and work hard and sacrifice and get kicked in the gluteus maximus. In addition to being an outrage, the frivolous decision by Judge Colabella and gang is a drag on the public revenues, on the taxpayers' money. Colabella et al. Never addressed Glendora's arguments. Glendora documented everything she claimed with pounds of exhibits. It took 70 hours to write, type, print, serve, and submit Glendora's cross motion. Defendants didn't even answer it. Colabella, Powell, ignore this 70-page paper. It's hard for me to read this because of my own handwriting. It hasn't been typed yet. Glendora should have got a default judgment when defendants never showed for the conference. Prima facie, Glendora had the case, but it takes a crooked court to trample a case that should win, obviously. Literally, on first appearance, the evidence was all over the place to raise the presumption of facts and establish the tortfeasing in question. They had no defense. They never will have defense. Neither do Colabella nor Powell. They should be listed in Who's Through in America. Judges Burroughs, through Colabella, as listed in this TV report, rule for what is best for the judges. Judges always rule what is best for themselves. The record shows that Judge Colabella's by the nose by his ferocious clerks. Glendora will never entrust them with a justice job again. They didn't know the law. They don't know what they are doing. Judge Colabella took an oath to support the Constitution of the United States and is bitterly and ignominiously pro se, anti-pro se. He stands up for bad faith contrary to his judicial oath. Glendora gets malice instead of justice, as the superimposer on TV says, over the names of Colabella, Powell, Mallon, and Kellner. Remember again, conference is canceled, no trial by jury, no trial, no jury. It is a correspondence school. You get your law degree by a correspondence school. He ruled in favor of breaking a contract, going back on your word, lying, stealing, cheating, covering up, negligence, bad faith, and a farce on court reform. He cut his own record, just as the defendants did, to be seen and heard on 10 cable TV systems, the country's largest. Purvis and the defendants moved for summary judgment just to get out of the discovery. They did. Glendora was cheated and manipulated. Glendora will appeal October 8th and waste another $500 and 100 hours looking for justice in the Second Department, New York Supreme Court. It's the corrupt leading the corrupt. Modern courts is corrupt, and Colabella's court is corrupt. Judges with no judgment, judges not qualified, judges with absenteeism, law clerks getting the upper hand, rip-off to pay for minutes, judges pawns of the political boss, judges amateurs, clerks ex parte, clerks sinister manipulation, and judges monolithic slowness. We need a delay reduction plan the way the federal courts have, and we need a cost reduction plan the way the federal courts have. We need minutes taken by state employees, not entrepreneurs like Denise Carbone, who ripped Glendora off for minutes $1,450. Judges get the pay, have no say, and clerks have the sway. You can't have audio tapes, you can't have audio recorders in the courtroom, you can't have video recorders in the courtroom. That's because the courts don't want you to know how bad they are. And can you wonder, after this Colabella farce, they double-space their papers, murdering the trees. They only write on one side when everything has two sides, slaughtering the trees. They're late for the bench. They're nowhere around in the afternoon. And there's no place for the jurors to be where they can be, not the jurors, excuse me, the witnesses. They're right out there in the open hall. They don't have any little conference rooms where litigants can get together and conference. Everything has to be done out in the hall. And there are witnesses there waiting to testify, and they're barefaced in the hall. Glendora substantially refuted every statement of Hubbard and Mayapath. 71 pages, 70 hours. Judge Colabella, Raymond Powell chose to ignore it. They were looking out for the bungling Hubbard, Mayapath, Beck, modern courts, and their bungling lawyer, Edmund Purvis. Colabella, Powell, Mallon, Kellner should be sued, but the crooked system has given them immunity. And the defendants had they had 2 weeks, I think, to reply to my reply affidavit. And they didn't. They chose not to. Why? Because they knew they didn't have to. They had everything sewed up with a manipulating, double-crossing court. Glendora is injured. She goes to court for justice. She is injured worse by the court. There is no hope for justice in Westchester County Supreme Court. 10 judges and $10,000 and nothing but unconstitutional anti-pro se. Glendora is reading the New York statutes. She will end up knowing the law better than any of these political hacks or any of these political self-solers. And the last thing that I include for the people we're complaining to, and I'll tell you again who they are. They're Cuomo, Trafficante, Colabella, Malonis, Ingracia, Casella, Stern, Judith Kay, Elizabeth Hubbard, Raymond Powell, and Glendora's TV audience. And the last thing that I include for them is my reply affidavit. Because remember, Purvis and the defendants didn't even answer at all. And they win, and of course we're going to sign this, yours in truth, Glendora, box 416, White Plains, New York, 10602, 914-949-9495. You can send stuff to box 532, that's all right, but I would eventually like to have everything come to box 416, White Plains. I have the 2 boxes now. And that's terrible that I can't even read my own writing, so I make a resolution to you right now that has to stop. Right now, that has to stop. We have to write clearly, because I don't see how poor Franklin can read this to type it. But you know how it is when you're composing something. Thoughts come so fast. Thoughts just come so fast. They come and they're in and they're out. I say that thoughts travel at the speed of light, 186,000 miles per second, and that they are an electromagnetic wave. In my writing in physics, that's what I said. That a thought is our highest frequently electromagnetic wave. And I think that makes quite a sense. It's the highest frequency of anything in the electromagnetic spectrum. And now, it is time for jokes. John's mother said that her son played hooky from school, and the mother got a thank you note from the teacher. And Anthony says that he prefers older teachers, and his mother says that's because he likes to see them age. And Billy declares, when I was in high school, my teachers respected me. And his mother-in-law says, certainly, you're supposed to respect your elders. Glendora versus Cablevision, I can't think of anything that really happened this week. Tonight, the second program will be back on the cable TV in Nassau County and Brookhaven, Islip, and Huntington. That's such a big one. How can I forget that? We have a new folder. We have a pretty great folder for Cablevision. This log went out on Monday or Tuesday for last week, and it cost a lot of money. It cost $20. So I don't think we're going to do that anymore. In fact, I told him this might be the very last log, or the next to the last log. And Cablevision hasn't broken any laws, and I don't know why they've capitulated, but they must be up to some evil. We're waiting for next Tuesday will be the oral argument on Glendora versus Cablevision, the first lawsuit that I brought against them for violating my freedom of speech. And I get a chance to argue for 5 minutes, and Robert Perry and Brian Grafman get a chance to argue for 5 minutes as amicus curiae, and Kalaji gets a chance to argue for 10 minutes. So that will be down before the United States Court of Appeals at Foley Square at room 1705 in a very elaborate courtroom. Oh, by the way, the federal courthouse is really taking great shape here in White Plains, the new one, down at the corner of Quaropus and Fisher Avenues, or Lexington, whatever you want to call it. And they've got, looks like Minutemen and great bronze plaques underneath all the windows around the front side of the building. And now they're putting into pieces, here comes Ginny! Now they're putting into pieces the pieces of the dome. And everything is precast concrete, and these pizza slices of dome come in. They're sliced like a piece of pizza, and they're being fitted. And it's going to be quite an elaborate place with pillars in the front and this dome.